MPs will vote on the deal on December the 11th.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thanks, Ollie. Welcome to Thursday's programme. How you doing? Have you had a good day? Hope you're well. Coming up for 3 minutes past 5. It is the 29th of November 2018. My name is Richie Allen. This is your Richie Allen Show. Where else would you be this time of a Thursday?
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show. It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Welcome indeed. Now, in the second hour, I'll be introducing you to Danny Jones. I saw a YouTube video put together by Danny about Melanie Shaw, who was on this programme. The last time she was on was just over 2.5 years ago. And I noticed that Danny had a website called hoaxpolice.wordpress.com. That's hoaxpolice.wordpress.com, where he challenges the conclusions drawn by the independent or alternative media on things like child sex abuse and other subjects. So I invited him on. So Danny joins me in the second hour. I'm looking forward to speaking to him. Spoke with him briefly earlier on. Comes across as a really nice bloke. But he's saying things that are different, and he's contradicting some of the things that you have heard on this programme. So in the interest of balance, Danny will join me later on. In the first hour, though, Dayna Martin joins the programme to talk about radical unschooling. Fascinating woman who's been on with Dr. Phil, CNN, Oprah, many more top-rated television programmes in America to talk about unschooling and to get away from agenda-based education. What's agenda-based education? Think you might have an idea. Dayna Martin, this hour, due to speak with me the other day, but the weather was horrendous in New Hampshire and she lost power. A lot of people lost power there and we couldn't do it, but we're going to do it today. We're live on Fab Radio 2 here in Manchester, triggerwarning.tv, TuneIn Radio and richieallen.co.uk. How you doing? You well? You well? You well? You good? You can tweet the programme as usual. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Emails sometimes take a long time to get to me. So tweet me if you want to. I'll be glad, as always, glad to hear from you today. Right then. A number of you sent me a clip today. Thanks, by the way. Little producers you are. Little producers. You sent me a clip and it appeared to be of a press officer for the European Commission for Migration, Home Affairs and Citizenship. Bit of a mouthful. So who is the European Commissioner for Migration, Home Affairs and Citizenship? Well, his name is Dimitris Avramopoulos. Dimitris Avramopoulos. He's the commissioner. Now, the voice you will hear isn't him. Like I said, I think it's a press officer because I can't identify the bloke. I've tried, dear listener, but I can't identify him, which is very unusual for me, all right? But I can't. So I'm presuming this guy is press officer. Doesn't matter anyway. What matters is what he said. What did he say? Have a listen. Prick your ears right up.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, dear guests, it's nice to have you here.
Nice to have us all here. Now, this isn't about Brexit. It's about migration, okay? So listen to what he says very carefully.
On our Strasbourg press conference, and I would like to say some words on the Global Compact on Migration. On the 10th and 11th of December, there will be an international congress in Marrakesh, Morocco, with regard to this Global Compact on Migration. And the participating countries are set to sign this agreement. And although this joint agreement isn't binding, it's still meant to be the legal framework on which the participating countries commit themselves to build new legislation.
You following this so far? International Congress on migration taking place in Marrakesh on the 11th and 12th of December. The signatories, which will be all the countries in attendance, will be signing this declaration. It won't be legally binding right now, but it will be the framework for a future legally binding agreement. What's in it? What's in it, you ask?
And
Come
one
on.
basic element of this new agreement is the extension of the definition of hate speech. The agreement wants to criminalize migration speech.
Criminalize migration speech. This has got to be a wind-up, right? One of the things they're going to do is outlaw hate speech against migrants and criminalize migration speech. It's a wind-up. Dom DeLuise, Jeremy Beadle, rest in peace, is going to jump out and go, ha-ha, to the assembled press. You've been framed, you've been fooled. Surely they're not going to try and criminalize discussing the migrant policies of your countries, are they?
Criticism of migration will become a criminal offense.
What? What did he just say there? This guy who was a press officer for the European Commission on Migration?
Of migration will become a criminal offense. Migration speech. Criticism of migration will become a criminal offense. Migration speech. Criticism of migration will become a criminal offense.
Be Jesus. Criticism of migration will become a criminal offence. What else does he say?
And media outlets, and that also concerns you, that give room to criticism of migration can be shut down.
What the fuck? Who's going to shut them down? So the Daily Mail then, in this country, which has been fairly vocal, or a fairly vocal opponent of the UK's migration policies, what this guy is saying is that you can be shut down. Now, don't shite the bed just yet. There's a lot of hyperbole here coming from this guy who I don't know who he is, but he's obviously a spokesman for the European Commission on Migration, and I gave you the name of the commissioner a minute ago. Right.
The compact for migration is legalization of mass migration.
Right, okay. Now, this agreement is online for anybody to read. You've only got to put in to a search engine Marrakesh International Congress Migration, and you will get a link to the PDF file. So I had a read of it. Is there any truth in what this guy is saying? First of all, it isn't legally binding. Is there any truth in what he's saying about the fact that criticising migration will be criminalised? Well, let's have a look briefly. This Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration, final draft, was prepared in late July, early August. For this Congress, which will take place in Marrakesh, in Morocco, in 11 days' time, reaffirms the New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants, and it is determined to make an important contribution to enhanced cooperation on international migration in all its dimensions. So the signatories will adopt this Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. It is a fairly lengthy document broken into about 25 different objectives. PDF file, you can read it. Objectives. So Objective 17 states that countries will seek to eliminate all forms of discrimination and promote evidence-based public discourse to shape perceptions of migration. We commit to eliminate all forms of discrimination, condemn and counter expressions, acts and manifestations of racism, racial discrimination, violence, xenophobia and related intolerance against all migrants in conformity with international human rights law. We further commit to promote an open and evidence-based public discourse on migration, blah, 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 blah. How are they going to get there? Well, to realise this commitment, we will draw from the following actions. This is what we will do. We will enact, implement or maintain legislation that penalises hate crimes and aggravated hate crimes targeting migrants. We will train law enforcement and other public officials to identify, prevent and respond to such crimes and other acts of violence that targets migrants, as well as to provide medical, legal and psychosocial assistance for victims. We will empower migrants and communities to denounce any acts of incitement to violence directed towards migrants by informing them of available mechanisms for redress. And we will ensure that those who actively participate in the commission of a hate crime targeting migrants are held accountable in accordance with national legislation while upholding international human rights law, in particular the right to freedom of expression. So we're going to shut down hate speech, they're saying, but we will also recognise the right to freedom of expression. But this is the interesting part. Subsection C of Objective 17, subsection C says, we will promote independent, objective and quality reporting of media outlets, including internet-based information, including by sensitising and educating media professionals on migration-related issues and terminology. They plan to sensitise and educate media professionals on migration-related issues and the terminology. They will invest in ethical reporting standards and advertising. It's propaganda. That's basically lobbying. They're going to lobby the media, basically. They're going to lobby the media to get the media to report favourably on migration. They also say they want to stop allocation of public funding or material support to media outlets which systematically promote intolerance, xenophobia, racism and other forms of discrimination towards migrants, in full respect for the freedom of the media. So, we heard a guy saying that they're going to criminalise criticism of migration. He was basically talking through his backside. There isn't any mention of that specifically in the document that has been published online, which will be signed off at this Congress in Marrakesh in 12 days' time. But there is alarming enough language in there, basically sensitising the media and educating the media on how it should report on migration and on the terminology the media should use. Also encouraging the lack of material support to media outlets that step over the line. Media outlets that are alleged to promote intolerance, xenophobia or racism. So it's very, very interesting. And I thank you, my listener, for sending me the link to that bit of audio today from the European Union. But I wouldn't shite the bed just yet. It's dangerous enough, don't get me wrong. But where the guy says they're going to criminalise the criticism of migration, well, he's talking through his sphincter. They're not going to do that. At least not easily. They might very well want to do that. I'm sure they do. But there isn't anything in the draft document that shows that they're going to criminalise it, make it against the law to criticise your government's immigration policies. All right? Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. I know that RT, Biz has just sent me a link there to an RT story. I know that RT have talked about this before in the past, and other independent media outlets have predicted a future, have predicted that further down the line, governments will legislate against the criticism of immigration or migration and claim that it is basically xenophobia. We're not there yet, is the point I'm making. And what this guy says will be signed off on in Marrakesh in December, well, again, he's grossly exaggerating it. The audio clip we heard, the document doesn't talk about criminalising criticism of migration, but it does definitely talk about putting pressure on the media in terms of how the media should report on it. Very interesting times these. 17 minutes past the hour. Theresa May has refused to rule out a no-deal Brexit if the deal agreed with the European Union is rejected by members of Parliament on the 11th of December. It will be rejected. At least I think there's not a cat's chance in hell that it will pass. May was pressed repeatedly on the issue by MPs today, appearing in front of a committee, the Parliamentary Select Committee on Leaving the European Union. It's the Commons Liaison Committee made up of chairs of all these select committees. Let's have a little listen to some of what May said. Don't worry, she's lying.
If the House were to vote down the deal that has been agreed, given that the European Union has been clear that this is the deal that has been agreed and this is the deal that is on the table, then obviously decisions would have to be taken in relation to the action that would need to be taken.
So if Parliament voted down the deal on the 11th of December, would you really, Prime Minister, given what we now know from the analysis, contemplate taking Britain out of the European Union on the 29th of March without a deal, without your deal, without any deal?
If Parliament votes down the deal on the 11th of December, there is then a process, as you know, that is in the legislation for the length of time given for government to come back and make a statement about the next steps. But the timetable is such that actually some people would need to take some practical steps in relation to no deal if the Parliament were to vote down the deal on the 11th of December.
Now, Jeremy Corbyn was speaking to ITV today. I don't have the audio, it's not necessary really. And Corbyn said that MPs would not allow a no-deal Brexit. Corbyn thinks there's a whiff of a chance that he might become Prime Minister real soon and that he might become Prime Minister without a general election. I hear you say that's impossible, Richie. It isn't impossible. It's not. There is a legal mechanism by way of which Corbyn could end up as Prime Minister in the next few months. Sky News have been all over this. Lewis Goodall, the Sky News correspondent, has been writing about it on Sky, about how it could possibly happen. I'm not saying it's likely, by the way, but it's a possibility. Of course they won't allow a no-deal Brexit, because a no-deal Brexit is the best possible thing that could happen to the country. Of course. Lots more I wanted to talk about, by the way, but time is against me, and Dayna Martin is standing by and wants to chat with us about unschooling. Fascinating woman. So looking forward to speaking with her. If you have something you'd like me to put to her, if there's a comment, if there's a point of view that you think I've not made or she hasn't made, tweet it to @Richie Allen Show. It's @Richie Allen Show on Twitter. So Dayna Martin joins me next. While Dayna is being lined up by my legion of producers here, I jest. It's just me. While I get her on the line, let's have some music from Aerosmith. Why not, eh? Right, music from Aerosmith on the Richie Allen Show. It's exactly 23 minutes past the hour. Welcome to the programme. If you're just joining us, it's @Richie Allen Show on Twitter, by the way. Loads of tweets on Brexit and May, and on the European Union declaration on migration. I think we'll be picking that up in a week or so time when that conference takes place in Marrakesh in Morocco. We'll talk about that. I'm really excited about meeting my first guest today. I think she's a remarkable lady. Spent quite a bit of time in the last couple of weeks reading all about her, watching her on YouTube, and she's remarkable. She's an activist educator, and she wrote a book. She's written a couple of books, but she wrote a book that was a huge hit around the world, particularly in her native US. The book is called Radical Unschooling, A Revolution Has Begun. She's a parenting coach, a raw vegan chef. She has her own raw vegan business as well. And she has appeared on stellar, massive television shows like Dr. Phil. She's been on with Oprah Winfrey. She's been on Daytime, CNN, Nightline, and everything else. So what she's doing here is anybody's guess. Dayna Martin, welcome to the programme. How are you?
Hi, how are you, Richie? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for you're slumming with us, Dayna. Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Phil, and Richie Allen, whom nobody's ever heard of. But thanks for coming on. Brilliant to have you on.
Oh my goodness.
And you, by the way, will be at Anarchapulco in February of next year, which we'll give a big plug to because we know Jeff Berwick and many of the people who will be speaking. That's very exciting. Let me ask you this. Is it the most difficult time there's ever been to be a child? right now?
Yeah, I mean, to be a giant, is that what you said?
No, to be a child. To be a kid. I should have said kid, shouldn't I? To be a child. Is it the most difficult time to be a child right now?
Yeah, it's a very difficult time to be a child in our culture. I mean, I think children are the most discriminated people in our culture today. And I think that there's so much oppression towards children, and it's okay in our culture to treat them as less than and to focus on obedience and compliance. And anyway, I think that children are next on the human rights agenda, and that's my focus of my work and all that I do.
There was a time, is there a time that we can identify where there was a radical shift in terms of how we educate children? When I went to school, I'm 43 now, and when I went to primary school, it was my primary school was a lovely place to be. We had good teachers, we learned mathematics, we learned how to read and write, but there was a lot of time where we were left to our own devices, to figure things out for ourselves, to be creative, to play. Now, I hear from parents today, Dayna, who have children in primary school, and they describe an experience that's completely different to the one that I had. Can we identify a time when that happened, when schooling became much more rigid and kind of conformity-based than it used to be?
You know, I think you're right. I truly think that about 20 years ago, things started to change really drastically. My time in school, although I didn't want to be there and I have a lot of negative memories, it wasn't anywhere near as oppressive as it is today. We had recess 2 or 3 times a day.
Got a very bad connection there. Sorry, Dayna.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's not your fault. No,
okay.
The connection just dropped out between us. My apologies. You were just beginning to talk about. You said your own experience wasn't great, and that you had 2 or 3 recesses a day, and then we lost you. Go ahead.
Okay. What about now? Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we're getting you now. Thanks. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think things have changed drastically in the last 20 years. I think schools are much more oppressive, that the focus on numbers and grades and school rankings and the focus on obedience, everything is getting much, much more rigid and strict and controlled. And so I think that there's never been a time that of greater importance to help children be a child's voice and try to advocate for them to have more freedom and respect and options.
Why have things changed so drastically? Is there a harmless reason for it? Is it bad management, Dayna, or is it something maybe a bit more sinister?
Oh, I think it's a lot more sinister. I think it's all focused on government control and trying to create factory workers, yes men, trying to dumb the society down that we have. I mean, we don't breed free thinkers in our culture, and school is where everything starts. If we can train kids to obey and to dumb them down to take orders, we're not going to, the government won't be challenged, and things will just get more and more oppressive. So I think that schools are the first place where the government focuses on controlling the population.
Creating a future group of kind of worker bees that will take whatever they are given by society and won't question it, will drink beer maybe, watch sports, and then go back into work on Monday morning. You think it's a definite plan, it's a definite designed and thought out system to create kind of, automatons basically in the future?
Oh, that's why schools were designed. If you read the history of education, of compulsory schooling, that's exactly why they were created. In fact, when compulsory education first started in the late 1800s, 85% of parents, or actually, you know what the statistic is, 88% of parents opposed it. They had to be brought by gunpoint to force their children in school. That this was never thought of as a good idea, ever. We've just been so conditioned and so forced little by little that now we think it's normal. But most parents, they don't want this for their children, but they've also been conditioned. Parents have been trained to train their children to make life easier for government. And it really is sinister, and it sounds like a total conspiracy, but it truly is. And so I'm somebody who likes to wake people up to share with them that you do have options, that there is so much more to life than creating children that just become factory workers or yes men, that we're all geniuses, all children are geniuses, and they're meant to do amazing things in life. And happiness can only truly come when we're free. And so instead of conditioning children to live a mundane life, taking orders from others and just slipping into the system like a cog in the machine, my job is to wake people up and to share with them that you deserve so much more as a parent. You deserve free children. You deserve to be free yourself. And so this is a huge, huge deal. And there's so many people joining me in this mission and this focus that it's just time. It's time for this awareness to come. And I'm honored to be able to be a voice to share it.
Brilliant. Things have become very strange in the UK. Now, I'm not from the UK. I'm Irish by birth. But in the last few years, we've seen some very strange things happen in this country. Schools have definitely become more draconian in their attitude towards children, but also schools' attitude towards parents has become more draconian. We've seen people fined for taking their children out of school during school time. We've seen things being introduced in the classroom, discussion of sexual orientation, discussion of sexual identity with very young children without the parents being notified of that either. These are very strange times. Is that something that we're seeing in the United States as well?
Oh yeah, I mean, everything right now is so intense. I mean, with the government and Trump in office, and everything you've mentioned is present in the U.S. and then some. So I think there's a major uprising and an awakening that's happening right now, and there's a lot of energies that are clashing right now as far as freedom and respect and the rights of all kinds of people. So yes.
Talk to me, Dayna, about
here right now.
Talk to me about unschooling then, and what you discovered when you were writing the book. Let me just remind our listeners, we've got Dayna Martin live on the line. She's an advocate of radical unschooling and has written a book that was a huge hit called Radical Unschooling: A Revolution Has Begun, which was massive and still is. It's very relevant today, maybe more relevant than when you wrote the book. Talk to me about what you discovered about when children are not subjected to the sort of very austere environment that we've been discussing, when they're not exposed to that. Talk to us about the differences in children, what difference it makes to them.
Well, my goodness, there's so many answers to that. I feel like when there's so many different components that I want to share about, but when there's no age segregation, children that are in school are age segregated. And so it really limits their social circle when they're told not to hang out with people older or younger than them. And when you're forced to sit next to people all day, every day that are the same age, it really conditions you to be in a certain mindset where unschooled kids, they don't have any sense of that. They connect with people not because of age, but because of common interests. And so my kids have had friends that are 10 years younger than them or 20 years older than them. Their social circle is so much huger, and they have so many more opportunities for growth and expansion and learning based on just not being age segregated alone. And that's only one part of it. The other part is children aren't all designed. As humans, we're not meant to learn the same things in life. We really aren't. We're meant to focus on our purpose and what we really love doing. And we all have a different role to play and different lives to live. So that's a really important focus, is children that are living freedom and unschooled, they are experts at what they love. They're experts at what they know. They're entrepreneurs. And my children have had their own businesses since they were very young. Children learn that when they love doing something, they can have a career with it. They can make money doing what they love. And so it really is an entirely different way to live. I feel like children born today are like pre-wired to know injustice. And kids born today are really, really opposing control. They're really, really opposing. I have calls with parents almost every day for parenting coaching where they're saying, parents who have kids in school who are saying, my children are so oppositional compared to the way I was. Well, I do think that there's an evolution in consciousness of children that are being born now to really just speak up and say, the way that we've been treated is so unjust. This isn't fair. And so they're pushing up against the system. So
this is really interesting stuff, Dayna. How does it manifest in the child who is resisting it in school? I mean, probably traditionally, when I think back to my time in school, I knew boys and girls, because I went to a mixed school, high school and primary school. I knew boys and girls who were just absolutely not interested in it and didn't like it. And with them, it tended to manifest itself in bad behaviour as a way of rejecting it. How are children showing today that they don't want to be controlled in that way? How are they demonstrating that?
Well, I mean, that's interesting because you mentioned behavior, and 99% of parenting focus in our culture and all over the world is focused on obedience and compliance.
Yeah.
And behavior modification being the goal of parenting is to control behavior, where that's so narcissistic to model to only care how a child's behavior affects you as opposed to why they're acting that way. So one thing that I love to help parents understand is you need to focus on the needs under a child's behavior. There's a reason why they have certain behaviors, but we're so conditioned to only see it as behavior. It's so much like dog training. Parenting and the way adults interact with children is so much like dog training. And when you see it for what it is, I think people they wake up and they realize that they haven't been treating children with the respect that they deserve. And once you shift to a more respectful place, the child's behavior changes. And so children behave as well as they're treated.
Of course they do. Of course they do. We're getting tweets on this, understandably. Dayna is on Twitter as well, by the way, and Dayna's website is Dayna Martin. That's Dayna Martin.com. She'll be at Anarchapulco in February next year with Jeff Berwick. We will talk about that in a minute. As there's a growing consciousness, Dayna, and I believe you're right, by the way, because I hear from people on this programme, and a lot of what they tell me, gels with what you've talked about. As this kind of rise in awareness is coming, is there opposition to it? Do we see opposition to it at state level, at national level? Can you see that now? Is that happening?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think it happens in the media first and foremost.
Yeah.
I've been on a lot of television shows in the last 15 years, and I'll tell you, the opposition to it from that perspective is really interesting. I've been interviewed by a lot of different shows, like the Dr. Phil show, for example, came here and were with us for 12 hours. They were totally on board and understood the philosophy. But once they got back to the
cutting room,
the way that they edited everything to be completely sensationalized, because I think that the truth, it speaks for itself, and it's really scary when people see that you do not have to control somebody else, that you can live in harmony and focus on the needs of everybody equally. I think it really challenges government and those in power. It's a really scary thing for them. So, yeah, I see it everywhere.
Is it difficult for people? I mean, I've had some mothers on this programme in the past who took their children out of school for many of the reasons that you've very eloquently described, and they've managed to do it. And in some cases, they had the means to do it. They had the financial wherewithal to do it. But a lot of people contacted the programme and said to me, we would love to homeschool. We would love to allow our children develop in that way. But because of the economy, because things are so difficult, we can't do it. Both parents have to work. Is that a problem, Dayna? Do you hear that from people who would like to who would like to change direction with their children and their children's education, but can't do it financially?
Oh my goodness. This is a really interesting topic because I've been running unschooling events for 15 years, and we have topics about single parenting and about how to do this on a lower income. People of any income can live this life. People, even if you have both parents working or you're a single parent, you can live this life. It does take more creativity, and sometimes it takes working together with a community, a co-op of people helping support each other. Oftentimes parents will work different hours if they both have to work, or sometimes parents make the decision to do without, for only having one income and doing without more things, and they let go of that second car, and maybe they move to a smaller place, because I think people are really back to the inner knowing that what really matters is family connection. What really matters isn't the material things that our culture wants us to believe it is, that we've been led to believe that having all these things will lead to happiness. So it's a real awakening of what matters. We've seen the tiny house movement. We're seeing a lot of minimalistic mindsets. I think that it's completely possible to live with less, to be able to live this life.
Here's a controversial question for you, Dayna. is being in school, is being in a classroom every day of the week, is it physically unhealthy for children as much as spiritually unhealthy? That's a great question. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, completely. And it's completely unnatural. I mean, and the interesting thing is we drug children to be focused on what we want them to be focused on in school. We say that they have a disorder because they're disinterested in the boring dribble we try to force down their throats.
Yeah.
But when they're home and they're doing what they want to do, if they're on the computer learning something or playing a game with a friend, we then say they're addicted to it. Even though they're completely focused, they don't have attention deficit disorder. They're able to focus on what they want to focus on and learn and grow from. But we label them as dysfunctional and drug them if they're not focused on what we want them to. It's such a twisted, screwed up thing.
It's a $1 billion industry, isn't it? The whole ADHD thing. I remember when I started my career, it was in Waterford in the Republic of Ireland, and the ADHD phenomenon was just kind of reaching Ireland, and this was in the mid to late 90s, and I was stunned, Dayna, that parents were happy for their children to be medicated because their children were difficult to manage and they wouldn't sit still in school and they were shouting out. And I was certainly no genius. I'm not a genius. But it occurred to me at the time that the behaviour they were describing was normal behaviour. Aren't children supposed to be running around and being loud and being excited and being thrilled by everything and shouting and speaking? Isn't that what children are supposed to do? And yet they've medicated this.
Yeah, well, I think you are a genius to be aware of that, because very few people are. And completely, it's like this disorder that we label children for being children. We criticize and drug and label and control children for not acting like adults. They're children, and they should be able to have the freedom to run around and play and express themselves physically and emotionally. And everything we do to try to control them is all focused on convenience for the adults, convenience for us, convenience for the parents. Because when you're forced by and trained by the government to control your children all day, every day, like most people are, it's a very unpleasant, unhappy, dysfunctional way to live. And for parents to get a break from that by drugging their children to get some peace, my goodness, I know it's completely wrong. I know it's terrible. I think it's the worst thing. But when you look at it from the perspective of what parents are forced to do, it's a really sad thing that they would take advantage of that. Imagine the desperation that they must have to get some peace, to agree to drug their own children. How miserable and unhappy they must be. So this is just it's a phenomenon at epidemic proportions of sadness, of depression, of parents being drugged. Everybody's drugged.
Yeah.
Because they're unhappy, because they're told to control, because they're trained to train their children. We can break free of all of this. There's answers. There's solutions to all of this. And it's to just say, fuck everything you've been told. Excuse my language.
That's good. I'm happy with that. Yeah.
You know, and really step into the inner knowing, the instinct that you have, all of these things that you knew when you were a child yourself were so screwed up. Everything told you. We know all this. Parents know all of this. I'm just allowing parents to feel what they know deep down to be true of how wrong this is. And so that's basically what I do, is just give parents permission to feel what they've known a long time, and to be able to parent their children in a way that feels right and instinctual. And everybody, not just the children, but the parents can heal from their own childhoods, because that's a really big part of it. That's a really big part of being able to live this life, is to see that maybe your parents did the best they could with what they knew at the time, but you were controlled too. And most of us underwent abuse. And so
certainly in school,
this is a really big issue.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, I did okay in school, and I went on to third level education and all of that. Not that it's important, but I did honestly hate every minute of it. I hated it. I hated primary school. I hated high school. It wasn't because, I was bullied. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't bullied. I was left alone, really. And I just hated it. I hated every minute of it. And I couldn't wait to get out, of it and kind of do my own thing. There are some brilliant questions coming in. I have to endorse, folks, Dayna's book, Radical Unschooling, A Revolution Has Begun. We're speaking with Dayna Martin. We've got Dayna, with her permission, for another 10 or so minutes. Snowed in. You were snowed in, weren't you? You had terrible weather there a few days ago. We don't get that here, you see, Dayna. We've got this very mild kind of maritime climate. You get horrendous biblical weather you get in your part of the world.
You do.
Yeah, you get it.
Oh my goodness. I knew I was supposed to be on live and there was no way I could get a hold of you, and I felt so bad. That we had no internet, no internet, no electricity. Well, there was no way to even get down our driveway. So
dreadful stuff. Well, do you know the Irish? I'm Irish, and we wrote the book on cursing, and I cursed you, girl. I said some stuff about you. I didn't actually. Of course, I didn't. No, because it's happened before. It's happened. You're a professional. It's happened before. I knew something had gone wrong. But no, it's brilliant that you're on now. Look, I'm going to throw it out there before I ask you about veganism. By the way, I'm going to throw this out there. Listeners are asking about vaccination. Now, look, it's a controversial subject. I don't have children yet. I please God, if there is a God, my fiance and I, we will have children at some stage in the future. Both of us want to. We really do want to, but we don't have at the moment. Dayna, on everything I've heard, if we do have children, I'm going to try and avoid vaccination. Listeners are asking about vaccination and forced vaccination, and why are we giving children 30 jabs today when you and I, you're a bit younger than I am, I think, we would have gotten, obviously, polio maybe, we would have gotten, what's the other one? Anyway, polio, one or two other shots, measles maybe. We're giving them 30 shots now before they're 5-6 years of age. Our listeners are concerned. Do you have an opinion on that? Is that something you think about?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're giving them like 38 shots before they're 1. So it's way more than even what you mentioned.
Yeah.
My children have not been vaccinated. No, I'd never vaccinate my kids. There's some great books out there about it. It's a hugely controversial topic. It's really interesting how heated and intense it gets surrounding this issue. But I would not vaccinate my children, no.
Good for you. There's a massive problem in Ireland at the moment with teenage girls who receive the HPV vaccination. There are thousands of them. There's a major media cover-up. The Irish media doesn't want to acknowledge that there needs to be an investigation into what happened to these girls. Good that you said that. Tell me about veganism. I'm a regular carnivore, and I did flirt in my teenage years with vegetarianism, if I can say that, and I went a few years without eating any meat at all. I did eat fish. A lot of my friends and people I've come to know through this program are big advocates of veganism and why it's healthy. Sell it to me, Dayna. I know you're a vegan chef. Talk to me about veganism.
Oh, it's so funny because, I mean, I'm not really into selling it to people because I really respect people's options. But I will say, so I've been vegan for almost 7 years, and I started because of health reasons. But since that time, my children have always had the freedom to have any diet they want, always. I've never swayed them one way or the other. They've watched documentaries with me. They've made their own decisions. All of my children were vegan for several years. My daughter, who's 17 now, is vegetarian. So she decided to start eating more dairy, and that was her choice, much to the dismay of my younger daughter, who's a huge animal advocate. So much of their bickering is because of their choices.
Brilliant.
My son Devin is vegan by choice because he watched the documentary Cowspiracy, and he's hugely into the environment. So for him, that was his motivation, was the environmental impact. My daughter Ivy, huge animal advocate, to the point where you do not want to visit her Instagram. That's like how hardcore she is. Like she's hardcore. And then my son, my youngest son is vegan by choice for the animals as well. So it's just something that feels right to me. It feels best to me. I love reading about animal liberation and the way that animals are treated. I think most people could agree are terrible. Yeah. So to me, it's a health issue. It's an animal rights issue. And it's also supporting my children and my daughter, Ivy. We do protests with a organization called Anonymous for the Voiceless. So part of me facilitating her passion and interest is supporting her in this. So we do those kind of things together. But I think there's so much information out there. It's just a matter of researching it.
Yeah, so many people told me they went to a vegan diet and they said they slept better, they felt better, their skin was better. And yeah, I've been flirting. I've been thinking about this for, well, if I'm to be honest, for about 2 years. I do move slowly, but I've been thinking about it long and hard. And we've only got a couple of minutes left. I've got to mention again, folks, we are speaking with Dayna Martin. Go to daynamartin.com and do check out Dayna's books. She wrote a book as well called Sexy Birth, but we've been talking about radical unschooling. A revolution has begun. Hugely important issue. Dayna, there's some strange things happening in this country with children. I alluded already to young children being asked to think about their gender identity and discuss these types of things. This outrages me because I believe that children should figure these things out for themselves. Let them think about these things when they're good and ready. And we shouldn't be forcing children to talk about gender identity, sexual orientation. It's absolutely crazy. And again, I think that's even more sinister than trying to create factory people of the future. There's something else going on there. It's been great having you on. You wouldn't change a thing, Dayna. You've raised your children this way. It sounds like they're marvelous. They're thriving. There isn't anything you'd change looking back.
No, there isn't. I mean, I'm so grateful for every single moment I've had with my children. Being a mom is so much better than I ever dreamed it could be, because I've listened to my instinct and I've listened to my heart as opposed to listening to others and people that call themselves experts. So there's nothing that makes you happier or more fulfilled than honoring your path and honoring your children and their freedom. So that means a lot to me. I want to just share really briefly that in Anarchapulco, I'm the community producer of this event that's happening in Acapulco, Mexico in February. I'd love for you guys to join us. We're having a free or family camp for 4 full days of the event where you can learn so much more of what I've shared here. We have 2 people listening that are huge fans of yours.
I doubt that very much.
They're on the Anarchapulco team, actually. It's Carl and Steve, and they're in the UK. And they wanted me to give them a shout out because they love your show and they are part of producing Anarchapulco. So they're a very important part of the team too. So you have fans from all over.
Well, do you know what, the Anarchapulco thing, I came across it through Jeff 2 or 3 years ago. I loved having Jeff on. I know you describe yourself on your website as an anarchist. And Jeff, pretty much everything that you are concerned about and that the things you highlight, Dayna, I agree with, and I love that you do. I'm just an old champagne socialist, so my solutions differ in terms of the solutions I would offer differ from the ones that maybe you would advocate, or Jeff. Not on parenting, because I think your parenting solutions are right on, and it's how I would try and raise a child of ours. But yeah, as an old socialist, I have different opinions. But no, I love hearing from people who have a different take and a different perspective on life than me, because I know that I'm not always right, and I know that I certainly don't have all the answers. But Anarchapulco sounds like an amazing thing. It's a stellar lineup every year, and it's a solution-based conference, isn't it, Dayna? Which I love. It's solution-based, not whining about the problems, but offering, practical solutions.
Yeah, it really is. So we have people, such a diversity in speakers and events and opportunities to grow and connect with other people. So thank you so much for providing a platform for us to speak about this, even though it may not be your beliefs. I love that you're so open-minded and that you welcome me on your show. I know a lot of what I speak about is really radical, but if anybody has any, if you were turned on by anything I said, as far as like your inner knowing and you want to learn more, I'm really easy to connect with. So you can find me on social media. You can find me on daynamartin.com. And I'm happy to help anybody that needs my help with any aspect of what I've talked about on the show today.
It's been a tonic having you on, Dayna. I mean that. Have a terrific Christmas. I know it's early to be wishing Merry Christmas to people, but do have a great Christmas, you and your family. I'm sure it'll be a blast, but also very educational in Acapulco in February. And in the new year, you're welcome to come back on the programme anytime. Brilliant meeting you. Thanks again.
Oh, I'd love to be back on. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
It was an honour. Thanks, Dayna. That was the lovely Dayna Martin there, live from New Hampshire. Check out daynamartin.com. Terrific stuff. And hi to Steve and Carl, by the way, who are working for Anarchapulco from this end, from the UK. Nice to know you're listening, lads, if you are indeed listening today. 6.5 minutes to the top of the hour. This is the Richie Allen Show for Thursday, November 29th, 2018. What'll we do now? We'll take another song. That's what we'll do. When I come back, I'll read some tweets. We'll have a quick look at the headlines again. There is a lot of Trump talk on Twitter. It's a proper circus, isn't it? The Donald Trump presidency. What a circus it is. What a nonsense it is. All this nonsense. Yeah, he's the real deal. He is in my backside. We'll have some music from Nirvana. Why not? Nirvana. We had Aerosmith earlier on. This is not quite Aerosmith, a bit more grungy. Back in a minute with more. And don't forget, Danny Jones joins the programme in about 10 minutes' time. That's going to be very interesting. Looking forward to speaking with him. I'll tell you all about him in a minute. Smells Like Teen Spirit on your Richie Allen Show. At Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Right, Nirvana and Smells Like Teen Spirit on the Richie Allen Show. Coming up for a minute and a half to 6 p.m. Good to be with you. Hi to Sean McDonald. How you doing, Sean? And to Ricky Emmett there. Very lovely woman and very well spoken. I agree with her 100% about schools, says Ricky of Dayna Martin, who was with me in the last hour, or for the last 30 minutes or thereabouts. Faisal tweeted, I remember my whole time going through the school system, how absurd it was that we were told to behave like adults while being treated like children. Surely you treat someone like an adult if you expect them to behave like one, says Faisal. I went to St. Saviour's Primary School in Ballybeg in Waterford City. And, well, am I going to backtrack just a little bit? I said that I hated every moment of primary school and high school. Maybe I was being a bit exaggerative. Maybe I was over-exaggerating there. I certainly had no interest in high school. I hated it. And I just got through it. I didn't like it. There were some people there I liked. I had some teachers that I liked a lot. And there were some lads that I hung around with that I liked a lot and still do. But largely I hated going in there. Primary school wasn't as bad, I have to say. There were some lovely teachers there. I remember them, I could name them now. But I won't. Teachers whom I met during primary school. And what did we learn at primary school? How was the day laid out? Well, we learned the Irish language, obviously, Gaeilge. So we had an Irish language lesson every day. We had a mathematics lesson every day. We had an English lesson every day. I think we did geography. We did nature studies, things like that, which I suppose would be called environmental studies these days. But there seemed, if I think back, there seemed to be plenty of time to do stuff like arts and crafts and stuff. I think we did quite a bit of that. And primary school finished early, didn't it? So we went in early. I think we went in at 8:30 or 9. I can't remember. But I think we were done by 2 or 2:30. It wasn't as tedious maybe as maybe it is now. That's my recollection of it anyway. There was time to do things outside of the curriculum things. Like I mentioned, maths and the Irish language. There weren't too many children in the classes, I remember. There would have been about 22, 24 children in my primary school classes. I think primary school classes are much bigger now, right? Aren't they? You hear people complaining about oversized, oversubscribed classrooms, so you might have 30 in some classrooms, which is very difficult. I know in the UK these days, they do employ teaching assistants. Now, when I went to primary school, there was no such thing as a teaching assistant. You had a teacher. And of course, being primary school, you had one teacher for the entire year. So you had that teacher from September through till July, late July, mid-July, I should say, the following year. One teacher. And if they were absent for some reason or other, if he or she was absent, you would have a supply teacher would come in and take over. But you had the one teacher. So if you had an absolute bastard, you were unlucky. You were stuck with that bastard for the year. Now, generally, you moved... In Ireland, you've got infants, you've got senior infants, and then when I went to school, you went from senior infants, when you were 6 years old, you went into first form. Well, it wasn't called first form in Ireland, it was called first standard. Then you had second standard, third standard, fourth, fifth and sixth standard. In the UK they call them forms. First, second form, third form, so on. We call them standard. Then after sixth standard, you did an entrance exam for a secondary school or a high school. And if you passed that entrance exam, if you were good enough, you went into the secondary school of your choice. That's how it worked anyway. It's been so long now. I mean, I entered St. Saviour's Primary School in 1979, Jesus. And I was there until 1986, right? September 79 until July 1986, would that be right? Something like that. It's such a long time ago. But I don't have so many negative... I know I didn't like it, but I don't have the negative recollections that I do have about secondary school, which I despised. And it's based on that I wouldn't be inclined to want to send a child through the school system. And I know several people who have never schooled their children, and I met children in the last couple of years here in the UK, north of here. You'll remember me mentioning on the programme from time to time over the years Aaron Calland. Aaron is an old mate. He was very helpful in the first couple or so years of the lifespan of this programme. Good lad, Aaron, and his wife, Vicky, and they homeschooled their children. And when I went to see them, when I went up to Bury, just outside Bury, to meet Aaron and his family, I was amazed at how alert, how bright, how eloquently spoken the children were. And they were doing stuff with books. They were reading stories, interactive stories. They were colouring in while reading the stories. They were colouring pictures. They were putting together puzzles. They were kind of left, as Dayna was saying, they were kind of left to figure out what they wanted to do for themselves. But at the same time, Vicky and Aaron were teaching them, to make sure they knew how to write, and they knew how to, form sentences, and they knew how to do basic mathematics. But very bright, very articulate, very alert children. And I thought, I like that. That would be the way I would like to do it, should we ever be blessed with young children. Shall we move on? Dear listener, shall we move on? I think it's about time we moved on. I hear you tell me to get on with it, so let's get on with it then. Right. This is interesting. Excuse me. And I have no doubt for some of you it's going to prove a tad controversial. That's okay. We don't mind that. Controversial is no bad thing. I want to introduce my next guest. I saw a video that he put together for YouTube, and I was very interested in it. And I followed him then to Twitter, and I saw that he'd been following our Twitter account. I only noticed that actually in the last couple of days. And I also saw that he had a website called hoaxpolice.wordpress.com, hoaxpolice.wordpress.com. And he challenges the conclusions that have been drawn by the independent or alternative media on child sex abuse and other subjects. His website's under construction at the moment, but I'm very interested in it. Had a chat with him today. I'm glad that he's agreed to come on to the programme, because I think he's going to present a kind of a counter narrative, or a different point of view to the one that we have heard often on this programme. That's no bad thing. hoaxpolice.wordpress.com. Let's welcome to the programme Danny Jones. Danny, good to have you on. How are you?
I'm good, Rich. How are you doing? No good.
I'm very well, mate. Thanks for coming on. hoaxpolice.wordpress.com. I know it's under construction at the moment and you're working on it. Now, you said to me this afternoon, and I was very interested in this, you said that over a number of years you've been very interested in different aspects, different areas of conspiracy research, and you said you were very open-minded to a lot of stuff, and you took a lot of stuff on board, but recently you began to see things in a different light, and you began to see that maybe the wool is being pulled over people's eyes, maybe by some independent content creators. We're not going to bash anybody in particular, and I'm very interested in that, and that's why you made your video about Melanie Shaw, and it's why you've launched hoaxpolice.wordpress.com. Tell me about that journey before we start talking about specific cases.
Yeah, sure. The journey of myself really is from like 15 years ago. I was watching you and David Icke and Alex Jones and everyone else on the alternative media, sort of telling people what the real media wouldn't tell you. Well, so I was led to believe that way anyway. And there's a few things, that you and David Icke and the likes of Alex Jones and people some of the stuff they said was, quite right and true. and some of the stuff that was getting put out there was, to me, was like, that can't be true. I've got to research this and have a look into this. So I went from there, really, over the last 15 years. I remember you, and Sonia Colton and David Icke and that, all the TPV, the People's Voice, I think it was called, and I watched all that, I even subscribed to it. So I was in the following quite big, to be honest. I followed the flat Earth, I followed the moon landings and all that sort of stuff, all being hoaxes, and I believed most of it, to be fair. I did believe most of it. But I started, the first thing what made me change my mind about certain points was Brian Harvey. Brian Harvey brought out a video about 2 months ago, 3 months ago about, and that's what turned me. I thought, hang on, that's blatant in my face, lies. I believed Bill Maloney. I thought he was doing a really good job. So it made me question things, and that's when I started questioning things. And then Melanie Shaw was one that I did question straight away, because I've never trusted the UK column, never ever, to be honest. Some of the stuff they put out there, I'm thinking, that's not right. So that was the first one I sort of challenged. I thought, well, let's have a look into Melanie Shaw properly. Let's really have a deep delve in Google, if you like, and phone some people up and get some information off people.
Yeah, there's been first of all, before we go any further, I want to say, not that it'll be believed anyway, but it doesn't matter. This is not about bashing any individual or any particular organisation. Now, the organisation that Danny has mentioned, I've criticised some of their output in the past when it's been blatantly false. And they were extended an invitation to come on here, and they declined it. In fact, they used to complain to David Icke about the fact that I was criticising them, but they wouldn't come on and take me on face to face. But it's not about them, and I don't want it to be about them. But at the same time, I'm not going to censor you either. I'm very interested in this, what you're going to talk about now, because I interviewed Melanie Shaw 2.5, 3 years ago, but I also spoke to her quite often off air, and something has within independent media circles, something has been given the status of fact, and it isn't a fact. And the fact that has been claimed is that Melanie, who is a lady who has had some very, very dreadful things happen to her, and who I think is an innocent and a pretty nice woman, but who's going through a pretty bad time, a fact has been declared. And the fact that has been declared is that Melanie is being kept in prison, basically as a political prisoner, because if she isn't, she's going to name some very big names. That is not true, is it?
No, not at all. That's not what I found out to be true anyway. That's not what I found out at all.
Go ahead.
Bottom line, let's put things straight first, Richard. Let's put things straight. Melanie Shaw was abused as a child. That's definite, no arguments there whatsoever. She's a victim. And she was abused again, I believe, in the care homes, and she was a victim again there. I've got no evidence to show me why that's not true, so I believe all that completely from Melanie Shaw's voice. But what I don't believe is that she's in prison for a political prisoner or because she's going to whistleblow or something like that. The video I did shows you why she's in prison. I won't go into why, because obviously it's a family court and there's kids involved and stuff. But if you watch the video, you'll see why she's actually in prison. What concerns me was the judge actually said to her, get yourself sorted out. Don't go on these internet shows and God knows what else. And what did she do the first 5 minutes? Actually, the said UK column went and picked her up and actually took her straight back to the studio to interview her as soon as she come out of the court. I'm like, that's not on. That's just frankly not on. So in my eyes, she's been abused again. Abused again by the said UK column. I won't mention names involved in them. We all know who runs them sort of things.
You think they took advantage of her? You think that basically she was exploited, right? Okay.
Yeah, to me, they took advantage of her and made her go out there and start protesting and getting a megaphone out and basically causing attention to herself. There's no need for it. There was no need for attention. She could have got on with her life. She had a boyfriend. She's got kids. She could have got on with her life quite happily. But to me, she's been infiltrated and used and abused again. So now she's another victim again from the alternative media, or from the what I call the hoax truth, as I call them.
What if Danny? What if Melanie did know that powerful men with connections to the establishment were hanging around Beechwood, that care home, that horrible place where she and others were abused? What if she did have names? Can we discount that possibility?
We'll never know now, though, will we? Because they got involved and sort of ridiculed her and made her basically put mud in the water, haven't they? So whatever abuse has happened now, it's going to be really hard to trust what comes out of Melanie's or the people that backs their mouth, because they've lied so far. So they're going to, in my eyes, why would all of a sudden they start telling the truth? I don't know.
I regretted.
They just lied and lied.
Yeah, I regretted bringing her on because I was given assurances about Melanie's state of mind, and I was reluctant to kind of bring her on because she'd been on with others, including the people we've mentioned, and I was given assurances of that. And she came on, and it was obvious to me. I spent a lot of time speaking to victims of clerical sexual abuse in Ireland, and many of those victims, Danny, they didn't get any help, and they had emotional problems because they weren't helped and they weren't looked after. And it was apparent to me when Melanie was speaking with me that while I believed that what she was telling me about what happened to her was absolutely right. I was also I felt a bit dubious about some of the claims, about her being targeted by the police and stuff like that, because I felt that she was in a bad place emotionally. And when I spoke to her privately, I did say to her, that maybe you need to be a bit careful about where you go and what you say. Maybe you need to take care of yourself and take care of your health. I'm completely willing to accept that, but I like you do not believe that Melanie is being kept in prison against her will because she might spill the beans. I have seen enough evidence, concrete evidence, that Melanie is there because of things that she has done and things in ways that she's behaved. And I'm going to say it. Some of the people who have exploited her, they know damn well why Melanie is in prison.
Yeah, they know the truth, and that's the
the
sickening part about it, which is they know the truth before I knew the truth, and they still interviewed her, they still pushed it, and they still even today. I think it was only last week. I think you could go and put out Melanie Shaw still getting tortured, and she's in solitary and all this sort of stuff. If you look at the prison she's in, they're cottage-based prisons. They're not. It's not like a normal prison. It's not even classified. It's not even ABC classified. It's all women's prison. I'm not saying it's a cushy number. I'm not saying that at all. All prisons are not going to be cushy. But out of all the prisons, she's not in a bad prison at all. She's in more of a, I wouldn't say a mental institute, but she's more of a where they're going to get help, and not so much just put in solitary. And it makes me laugh when they say she's been ridiculed and she's put in solitary and it's no good for her. I'm like, well, what solitary is she in? Is she in a cottage maybe? I don't see where the solitary is there.
And I'm sure you've had it already. I mean, you've put the website up, and the website's being built, and you're going to be taking on a number of different things said by people over the years, and that's your absolute right. You know that this is so contentious and it's so emotional for people that people are going to say, well, you're just a lousy bastard now, you're just a shill, and these guys are brilliant, they're doing great things, exposing all this stuff, and you're trying to shut them down, and you're trying to this is what happens. Go ahead.
I've had that thrown at me many a times, Richie, many a times. I'm a shill, paid agent, pedo protector, you name it. I've had it all chucked at me. And bottom line, I'm just a normal guy, just trying to get to the truth. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to show people what I wish someone had shown me 10 years ago. That's what I'm trying to do.
There are two irrefutable facts. Number one, Melanie's trials were not conducted in secret. I mean, this is a monstrous lie, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's outrageous. I mean, I was able to figure that out very quickly myself. I don't have producers, I don't have researchers. That is an absolutely untenable thing to say. Her hearings were not conducted in secret because we've spoken to people. I've spoken to people who were there. Mickey Summers was there. We know Mickey Summers was there. Other people were there. They were there, and there was nothing secret about it. And these things were reported on. And a second irrefutable fact, I believe, is that she's not being kept indoors and behind bars because of who she would name. And I'll tell you why I don't believe that. Because any number of people have gone public and have named high-profile politicians who are still alive. It happens a lot online.
Oh, it happens, yeah. It definitely happens. It definitely goes on. I'm not trying to say this doesn't happen. It happens all over.
By the way, I wasn't saying that you were denying that. No, the point I'm making is other people have been very, very vocal in naming people, and they haven't been put in prison. What I'm saying is, I don't think the establishment gives a rat's arse, excuse my language, about what Melanie, God love her, what she might say or might not say. They don't care, because who's going to investigate it? If it's true, who's going to investigate it? I would argue nobody. So it doesn't matter. So it's just a monstrous lie. And
well, the bad thing about the establishment, Richie, is they let her come out of court after what she'd done, okay? and they didn't give her no support at all, none whatsoever. I don't see the state or the government or the services that were supposed to be involved in helping mentally ill people. They didn't get involved at all with her, in my eyes, not at all, one bit. And they just let her run free, and of course that's where likes of UK Column or whoever jumped on them all over and abused her again, basically.
Faisal tweets, and some of our listeners will agree with him. They will say, what right does any judge have to order somebody like Melanie not to talk to any media, alternative or otherwise? That's a good point. People will say, well, the magistrate who was dealing with Melanie, it's a bit sinister if he's telling Melanie not to speak to anybody.
Yeah. It's not sinister. He was doing it for her own good. He was doing it for her own good. He wasn't doing it for his good or the government's good or anything like that. He was trying to do it for her own good. Your own. Listen, your head's not right. Do not start going out and start causing conspiracies and more stuff. Get your head sorted out first. Get off your drug addiction that you've got and sort yourself out. That's what he said to her. But that never happened. As soon as the court was finished, she was whisked away straight to a studio audience with people sat there interviewing it, and I was like, that's just the wrong thing to do. I mean, there's a part 2 to my video. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, I have.
There's a part 2, which shows that I'm not trying to ridicule at all Melanie. In fact, I feel sorry for Melanie. If I'd have known, I'd help her. If I knew how to help her, I would help her myself. But I don't know how to help her. As far as I know, the government should have systems in place to help her already. They shouldn't be relying on the people like UK Column and stuff like that to help her at all. So it's pretty sickening to think when you do find out the truth, and the truth is, yes, she was definitely abused. Yes, she's had problems. Yes, she's mentally ill. And where's the help? Nowhere. And that's pretty saddening to understand that the UK government or the UK state has not helped her in one bit, in my eyes.
Because what we've seen historically is that victims of these crimes, which are unimaginable, when they're not helped, of course they develop addiction issues, come into play, and sadly violence. And when I was speaking with Mickey Summers, it came up. I don't know why it came up. But I said, look, my experience, again, as a professional producer, meeting people like that over the years, is that when they're not helped, violence, sadly, is something that does manifest in people who have no other outlet.
Isn't it? It's frustration.
Frustration. And Melanie's not always been, she's been a naughty girl at times. I know this. Yes. And I found this out over a year ago, and I left well enough alone at the time. I don't make it a habit to, be criticising other organisations or other content creators, but with this particular organisation, they're not professionals. It's amateur.
No,
it's amateur night pretty much. I don't watch it, but what I do see of it, it's dreadful, and it's exploitation. It really is, and
it is.
I'm convinced. Yeah, I'm convinced they knew that her court appearances were not secret, and I'm absolutely convinced that they know that she's not being kept there lest she blow the whistle on any particular name of any person who might be alive. I just don't, and I believe they know that. It's pretty shameful. There's no recovering from it. As a presenter, there's no recovering from it.
It's shameful for her to be protested in prison, set on fire to her bed or whatever it is she did. On several occasions she did it, and it was a protest. As she said, it was protest. And I'm thinking, well, who's told you to protest? Someone's actually put that in your head to go and do that. You wouldn't think of that yourself. You're not right in the head to think of that sort of stuff. Someone's actually told you to go and protest and cause a ruffle. And it's like, well, I know who's told you. I'm just guessing. It's got to be them, right? It's got to be the UK Column has told you to go and protest. And,
now we have give us more. We have no evidence of that. What if?
No, none whatsoever.
We've no. To be fair to them, they're not here, and they won't be. I've extended them opportunities to come on with me before to talk about this.
Exactly the same, Richie. I've invited him in on Sunday nights. Come and chat. I've invited Brian. I've invited other people on UK Column. Come and chat with us. We've got questions. Please answer. They don't want to know. They just don't.
Well,
want to know.
What you find with the truth or industrial complex in general is these guys put information in the public domain, and they've got very thin skins. If you put information in the public domain, you've got to accept if it's criticised and if it's critiqued. These guys tend to retreat and say, look, we're important, we're being attacked, which is laughable and ludicrous. That's what they do. That's the default position. Nobody's attacking you personally. I don't know any of these people personally.
No,
but I know
I don't know them personally either.
But I know that Melanie is not in prison to protect the evil paedophiles which do exist, by the way.
But of course they're there somewhere.
That's right. But she's not been locked up to protect that. Now, to be fair to UK Column, in their absence, what if Melanie, and I understand this might very well be true, is writing to these people from prison and telling them that she's being abused, that she's being, slapped around, that she's being threatened, aren't they well within their rights to report that if that's what she is telling them from prison?
Yes and no. It depends how good a journalism they are. I doubt a journalist who's done 3 or 4 years at university to be a journalist that will even report that without going and find out the facts on the other side. To see, if phoned the prison, for example, and asked the question, they'd get evidence and not just take her story, not just take her letter. They'd go and find out the evidence and find out to see if they can back up what she's claiming. That's what a proper journalist would do.
Yeah, of course, but there is a but here. Who's to say they didn't? And if prison officers were treating Melanie Shaw or any other prisoner badly, if they were contacted by any news organisation, regardless of its standing, they're not going to come clean, are they, Danny? They're not going to say, well, yeah, we are.
No, that's right. No, they're not going to come clean. But even let's take a hypothetical question. A hypothetical that she did write a letter, and it's actually true. Let's say it is true for this example, then, that she is getting tortured and bullied in prison, and UK Column has reported on it. What the facts there is, UK Column could be right at that time, okay? But because they've lied about so much that I've found out about, how can I believe them? It's like if a guy tells you 10 lies, are you going to believe the 11th thing he tells you? You're not. You're going to presume that 11th thing is a liar as well.
Well, the monstrous lie is to say she's locked up for nothing. It's so easy to debunk that. It's outrageous that any pretend Mickey Mouse amateur, whatever you want to call it, I don't care what level it's at. If you want to call yourself a news organisation and then you report something like that and it's demonstrably, provably wrong, you've got nowhere to go ever. You're finished forever. It's the same with the whole thing about secret courts. It's just a lie. It's an outrageous.
Most of it's family court. It's not secret court.
It's not secret court at all. Yeah. It's dreadful.
But, as you say, Melanie Shaw wasn't a secret court. There was 3 or 4 people who actually went to that court in public and watched it. So it's not secret.
And of course, if Melanie does have information about figures or people connected to the establishment, it's going to be very difficult.
It is
going forward to find out.
Now. Yep.
Now I want to talk to you about something. First of all, Danny, I want to give you a shout out again. I'm speaking with Danny Jones. I saw a video put together by Danny on YouTube, and it touched a nerve with me because I've been critical of this organisation in the past over this particular story, not just this story. What they've done in the past, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag here a little bit. What the UK Column has done in the past is they've gone crying to David Icke, and I've got the emails to prove it. They emailed David Icke asking David to tell me to stop, that I was harming their reputation because I was being critical of the way they approached the Hampstead Heath child abuse story. Yeah. I was very critical of their handling of that, which was absolutely laughable. The way they handled that, right? Okay.
15, 20 people I know. They're all annoyed at UK Column for that.
I'm a very nice guy. I know people don't think I am. A lot of people think I'm a right bastard. I might very well be, but on air I'm not. And I'm wide open to somebody coming on here and having a proper go at me. I don't mind. And it was communicated to them, not only by David Icke, but by me. Come on the programme, because I interviewed Garish about 3 years ago. And he lost. He spat his dummy out because I played the devil's advocate, which presenters should do. I challenged him about some of the things that he was saying about Jimmy Savile, which I actually believed, but I wanted to wind Garish up to see how he'd take it. Of course, he didn't take it very well. And he went whining to David, and of course David basically told him to fuck off. Grow up here. Either go on and argue with Richie Allen, or just ignore him. Best thing to do with me is ignore me. Now. That's what they do. They don't want to face you publicly over any of this stuff. But I want to ask you, Danny. I believe that ritual satanic abuse is real. I really do. I don't believe it because I want to believe it. I don't believe it because I'm taken to flights of fancy and that I'm easily laid. When I first began interviewing people like David Icke many years ago, my early interviews with him, which are still available, were very antagonistic. I was very hostile with him when I was working in commercial radio, saying, I don't believe this is all nonsense. I believe it does go on. And I believe very powerful.
I can't find evidence. I can't find anything of it, Richie. Sadly,
you don't believe it.
I'm not proud, but I've looked for it and I couldn't find it. I could not find any I can find ritual abuse and I can find loads of abuse. Obviously, abuse everywhere in every single section, every single department. It's around, but I cannot find satanic. I don't find any devil worshipping, baby killing, whatever. I don't find any of that anywhere.
So you don't buy it, basically?
I don't believe the SRA. No, not one bit. I don't believe, because I've not found any evidence of it.
And that's
the only reason I don't believe it. I've not found evidence of it.
That's one of the reasons I'm glad you came on, because I've obviously spoken with people before who are very committed to trying to expose it. And, you know, in my position, it's difficult. There's only so many ways you can say, well, you know, show me some proof. I'm glad you're, and I'm going to shut up and get out of your way now in a second. You can elaborate on why you don't buy into it. All I'm going to say is, very skeptical early on, I was. But then I began to hear, not from one or two or three or four, but many different people from around the world, but also certified psychotherapists. And I could name, if I was to go into my email, I could name half a dozen or more of them. And the people coming to them with various problems, with emotional problems, with addiction problems, were often describing the very same or very, very similar things, Danny. And I began to think, wow, you know, is this going on? Now, look, I'm predisposed. I've got to put my hands up and say that I am predisposed to many of the, or some of the theories that I learned or discovered through people like David Icke and Jordan Maxwell and others. I'm going to put my hands up and say I'm very open-minded to that sort of thing anyway. But there were so many people speaking to so many different, not alternative practitioners or shysters, but genuine psychotherapists and psychiatrists, that I couldn't any longer say that these were unconnected or that this was some sort of hoax. That's why I believe it's real. And I believe the people I've interviewed...
Richie, everyone's allowed to believe anything they like. If you believe that, that's fine, but you're not going to make up a story and start pushing something that you can't get evidence for.
No, I'm never going to do that.
That.
No, not in a million years. Absolutely not, no.
But you know as well as I do, other people are doing that as today, you know. They're pushing this stuff that they haven't got no evidence for whatsoever.
What if I made an argument? What if I made, and you can absolutely smash this away out of the park if you want. What if I made an argument? Now, I'm not saying this about the UK column. Amateurish and unprofessional as this idiot Garish might be, and maybe I shouldn't call him an idiot, I don't believe that he's fundamentally dishonest. Well, hang on a second now. He's grossly exaggerated and has put out disinformation about Melanie Shaw, which is contradicting what I just said. So let me just say that again. Let me be clear. They've lied about Melanie Shaw's secret course and all the rest of it. Yeah. And I have no doubt they have. Here's where I'm going to give Garish a tiny bit of a pass. I believe that Garish absolutely believes that this stuff is genuine. And when you believe it so implicitly, when you believe it to your bone marrow, for some people, again, for non-journalists, they will fit stuff around their central theory. They will to support what it is they want to believe. And that's what I think he's done with Melanie. So he's not evil. It's
confirmation bias. Yeah. That's what it is. It's confirmation bias.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Bias. You know, again, I'm not trying to dig him out, but I believe that he fundamentally believes it, but does no credit to it by, you know, exaggerating or allowing information to get out there that he knows not to be true. Namely, again, that Melanie is locked up for reasons of, you know, whatever. So
the fact that he knows it's not true and still peddles it, if you like, on his show is the bad thing about it. That's the sickening thing about it. Knowing it's not true, but still peddling it and still telling your audience that it is true. And why are you doing that? What is your end game? I don't get that. Is that just for clicks? Is it just to keep the audience, subscribers? I don't understand. To me, it's only money. I can't see any other reason to do it apart from money.
Well, he's not going to tell us, is he? Well, he's certainly not going to tell me.
No. He won't speak to me. He won't speak to me at all.
And your approach to him has been professional, has it? It's been
yes,
open.
yeah. I mean, like the first few months, you know, it was please, can we have a chat? Can we contact each other? What do you think about this? ? Very polite. But towards the end, you know, the last few weeks, I've just got no time for him. Now he'll put a tweet on, I'll just answer it back with a complete opposite to what he's saying, because I know 99% of the time what he's saying. I mean, I can go through lots of hoaxes, which I will in a bit, and tell you what he's pushed, and which is lies, basically.
Yeah, I know.
We can start with.
Yeah, but just before you, because I know you're going to talk about Holly, Greig. Sean McDonald, hi Sean. Bob tweets that he doesn't buy satanic ritual abuse himself as a theory. I left you a little bit off the hook there because you said that you haven't seen any evidence. I should have said to you.
I've not seen any.
No, and I believe you haven't. Where have you looked though? No, that's not a loaded question. I ask you that because,
to be honest with you, newspapers and internet is only two places I've actually looked for SRA. I've not looked for it. I've not phoned social services up. I've not phoned them sort of departments up to ask them.
It's just because
I've only looked. really deep Google searching and paper, basically newspapers. Back to 1991. I even looked up the Blue House in America. I don't know if you heard that story or not before. And that was another one that was very similar to the Hampstead case. And it's just all rubbish, basically. So something's made up and it's been pushed along, and before you know it, it's took reins and gathered an audience, and before you know it, it's gone mental. And it's when you get to the nuts and cranny, back to the root cause, it was a lie. It's as simple as that. It was a lie. You know
who you're talking to, and you know that our listeners will be saying, "Jez, I can't believe Danny went through the mainstream media." There are a lot of people who have given testimony about the things that happened to them. I've interviewed some of them, and I find them very believable. Now, I've got to say this, Danny, and I said this to you today off air. But by saying I believe them, it's very important that for people who are listening to this for the first time, and I think some of your friends are probably listening to me for the first time, it's very important when I say, when I believe somebody, what I actually mean is, I believe that they believe what it is they are saying. I can't endorse anything that's... When Fiona Barnett came on this programme, when others came on this programme, and I liked them, I believed that they were telling me the truth as they understood it. What I can't...
That they thought is true, yeah.
That's right. What I can't do is say, they're absolutely telling the truth, this is spot on. I can't do that because I didn't witness what they witnessed. I never experienced it. That's where I'm coming from. That's what the bloody programme is supposed to be about. Let people speak and let the audience make their own mind up. But some of our listeners will say, going through the mainstream media, if satanic ritual abuse is real, well, obviously the mainstream media is not going to ever cover any of it. That's
they don't print it.
They won't talk about it.
No, you think the mainstream media, if it was going on, you think they'd be all over that, wouldn't you?
Why, Danny? Why would they be? If it was connected,
what a story! What a story!
Of
man.
course, but
every day.
Yeah, but if we know the media is controlled by 6 corporations, that's not a joke. We know this to be true, right? And if it is, we also know that Jeffrey Epstein, we know that Bill Clinton. Talk to you today about Hillary Clinton. Ironically, we know we know that a lot of very, very powerful people. We know that they've either molested children or they have had very close relationships with people who have molested children. Put the media into the hands of 6 corporations. Of course, it's very easy, I would say. And I'm not having a go at you can have a go back if you want. But you come across to me as very bright. Is it not a little bit naive to think that the media would publish it?
No, I personally think they can't publish it because the word satanic. If they took the word satanic out of it, they can publish it all because it's true. Then it'll be. I can believe there's rituals. I can believe there's loads of groups and pedo rings and grooming gangs and all that sort of stuff. But I can't see no devil worshipping going on, which is what the satanic bit means. And if they take the satanic bit out of it, fine. I've got no problem with that. I can see it. I can show you evidence of it. But it's the satanic bit I can't find. They're all devils and you'll find most of the SRA people are very religious. You'll find that they believe in God. I'm an atheist, so I don't really believe in anything like that at all. But you'll find they believe in God and they're very, very Christian or evangelical or whatever you want to call it that way. They're very, very believe in God. And if you believe in God, there has to be a devil. So therefore, the satanic to them is anyone that's abusing it's devil worshipping. Well, you've got to make out your mind. To me, a satanic ritual abuse is where there's a group of people that worship the devil and want to abuse this victim for the devils to support the devil. They don't do it for their benefit. They're doing it for the devil. That's satanic.
And you don't. That's a red line for you, Danny. That's a red line.
That's the word satanic's a red line for me.
But you know what? Aren't we
going on?
Aren't we surrounded by satanic imagery and satanic symbology? We are, Danny, aren't we? It's everywhere.
If you believe in God, you are. If you believe in God, then you are surrounded by devil stuff.
Well, I'm like you. Funny, ironically, I'm like you. I don't believe in the Christian God that I was encouraged to believe growing up. So, like you, I don't buy into that. But I do believe in. I mean, I'm surrounded by it in Manchester. I'm surrounded by Illuminati and satanic symbology, and I didn't notice any of it till I read books by Jim Mars and others. Again, I was very like yourself. I would have been very skeptical. And now I see I'm surrounded by it. Baphomet imagery all over Manchester. There's got to be a reason for that. People don't build buildings and put these statues of and effigies of these demons. Why would they? It's everywhere. It's just me. We could get segued now. I don't want to get segued.
That's fair enough. You see stuff around and you query it, which is good. But I don't see no devil worshipping around anywhere, and I've looked for it. I've actually looked for it, and I can't find it. Yes, I can see little Satanic, or what they call it, number 33, and all these things, the owl, and all that sort of stuff. I see all that around, and it's pointed out. But I don't see no devil worshipping Satanic groups killing babies or abusing children or whatever they're supposed to get up to. I don't see it anywhere, and no one's reported on it. The only people who report on it is people I found out to be lying, basically. So It makes me think, well, the whole lot's a hoax and a whole lie, isn't it? Until someone gives me evidence that isn't. I'd love you to send me some links that I can go and look at where it show me the Satanic stuff.
And I can't, of course. You know I can't. I'll be honest enough to say that all I could do is say, look, here's a link to a couple of interviews that I did, and this is why I find these people very credible. I'm going to remind our listeners again, we're going to talk a little bit about Holly Greig. Danny's on the programme for two reasons. One, because the programme's open to everybody, and I saw Danny's YouTube video. He's not on because I want to have a go. I couldn't care less about UK Column or any of these other wannabe journalists that let them do whatever they want, and they have absolutely every right to say whatever they want to say and broadcast it. But when you put stuff in the public domain, every now and then somebody's going to criticise it. Either live with that, develop some thick skin, or go and piss off. And if you want to... Go ahead.
It's like they have every single right to publish what they want, sort of thing. I've got to disagree with that, because when it starts coming down to families getting involved and kids getting involved, so we'll take Holly Greig for example. Holly Greig, I presume all your audience knows the story to that. Most of my audience knows the story to Holly Greig. The bottom line is, it's turned out that I can't see any truth in it. All I see is a hoax. That's all I see. I see fallings out with a mom, is it Anne, I think her name is, and she fell out with a lot of people. She started, as soon as she fell out with someone, she added that name to the list as well. It was so blatant and obvious that it was not true. But you've got these sheriffs and these social workers and these policemen and these families that Holly, or more that Anne, should I say, name, not much for Holly, but she'd named all these people, and these people got harassed for years and months, and they were innocent, completely innocent. So it's like when you say you can spout off what you want on air, to a limit you can, but when people are involved and they're going to get hurt and attacked, and then that you've crossed the line. Then other people are going to get affected by this. So that's when I think then the UK Column and the like stuff shouldn't have spread any of that, because it's false, and you're going to put other people and other children at risk.
I never saw any. I have to say this: I haven't seen any programmes about the Holly Greig story by any other media outlet. I've never. So whatever Garish and his pals did about that, I never watched any of it. I interviewed Robert Greene, and I like Robert Greene. And again, I believe that Robert Greene believes passionately.
He believed it, didn't he? He
two
believed
things.
It. He must have, to go to the extent he did.
He absolutely believes it. And there are two things that Robert Greene says whenever Robert is challenged about the claims made by Holly. Whenever anybody says to Robert Greene, I've not spoken to Robert for ages, but whenever anybody says this was a hoax, Robert always comes out with a couple of things. The Grampian police themselves admitted that the investigation was absolutely shoddy and shabby, to say the very least, from the get-go. And that's what piqued his interest in it from the very beginning. And, it was incompetence in terms of witness statements being taken, in terms of it being dismissed from the get-go. This is always a red flag for people like Robert Greene. How this was dismissed from the minute that Holly Greig made these allegations. And that's when you get red flags, and that's when people start looking deeper and start asking questions. And I don't know, the jury's out for me. I know you come on. I know you came on today, and I know some of your friends and fellow researchers, they wanted you to nail me to the wall over this particular case, and what do I think about it? I don't know is the answer. I completely respect your right to say that you think it's a hoax. That's why you're here, and you have every right to. And it's a good bit of balance for the programme. But looking back at that case, I don't know, jury's still out for me. And I think Robert Greene is honest. And I think he sacrificed an awful lot to try and get to the truth there. Back to you, Danny.
Well, it'd be good if you could set up an interview with Robert Greene and myself, because I've got plenty of questions that I think would trip him up. It would trip him up completely. I mean, you just said then the investigation from the get-go was sort of not done properly. Well, let's take an example. Was a case like this ever done before in the past? Not really. So was the police experience handling this? Not really. So hopefully they learned from it, that, apart from that. But it's hard to give a department a problem that they've never, ever come across before and then slate them for how they handled it.
But they did say, didn't they say, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I am right this time. Now, I've been very fair now. I knew you were working and you were coming on late. What I could have done was beavered away for a couple of hours and gotten out loads and loads of different reports to try and trip you up, but I didn't do that because I'm not dishonest. I'm going on memory now, on memory only. But if I remember, Grampian police from the very outset said that Holly was a truthful witness and acknowledged that they believed that she had been abused, and then changed their approach. And that again is one of the reasons why Robert Greene said, well, hang on a second, go ahead.
Do you not think they changed their approach because maybe one day into the investigation they realised it was absolute bullshit?
That's possible, isn't it? How can I say no to you there? I'd be an idiot if I said no.
That's my theory. Yeah, that's my theory. The policeman's investigated it. Comes to the first, if you like, accused or whatever, and investigated whatever they've said and realised that is rubbish. I mean, they've said that much stuff that there was people not even born by then. You know, the stuff that's come out of Holly Greig's mouth and Anna's mouth is, towards the end of it, has been absolute rubbish because they were getting nowhere. And they're naming people left, right, and centre, and just picking. It seems like they're picking names out of a hat towards the end, you know. And it's like you're losing your credibility completely, and your story's gone up shit creek basically. So you're pulling all sorts of names out of the hat now. You've got no evidence whatsoever. They investigated so many people. If there's 10 people accused and you investigate the first 2 or 3, and you realise that they're all innocent, you're not going to waste your time investigate every single one. You're just not. It's a waste of police time. Once you come to the conclusion that it was a hoax or that she's telling lies or there's something not right about it, the investigation stops. That's common sense, really. You can't keep investigating something. It's like trying to find something that's not there.
There's a very interesting dynamic between you and I think. Here's the dynamic as I see it. With the absolute utmost respect for you, by the way. There's no but either, I mean it. I respect your right to come on and your right to say what it is you've said. The interesting dynamic is I'm inclined... Maybe it could be argued. If I'm going to be honest, it could be argued that I'm inclined to have a little bit more sympathy with the person who is claiming the abuse and with some of the investigators. You, it would appear, correct me if I'm wrong, have a little bit more sympathy with the authorities, and that's bound to get up the noses of my listeners because they'll say, "How could you trust the police?" And do you know what they'll say? Before I shut up and let you back in, do you know what they'll say? They'll say, "Danny, look, Leon Britton said he lost the Dickens dossier. How could that possibly happen? Dickens gave him a list of very high-profile names of men who were abusing children, and he lost it. Theresa May appointed 2 absolute ringers, Elizabeth Butler Sloss and Fiona Woolf, people whom she knew were connected with people whom were accused of abuse. Mike Veal of Wiltshire Police said, Operation Conifer, there is no doubt that if Edward Heath was alive today, we'd be interviewing him under caution because the things that are being claimed that he did are real. Now, I absolutely believe that children, I believe, not because I want to believe it again, I believe that children were disappeared by the intelligence agencies of this country. Children whom were abused by Heath on Morning Cloud. I believe that. Now, whether it's true or not, people can say it isn't true. I believe it. Our listeners will say, how could you expect... Why would you believe the Grampian police when they say, we found out that this is rubbish and we found out that was rubbish? Why would you believe them?
Because you've got to put your trust in... You have to put your trust in the police and the judicial system. You have to. If you can't put your trust in them, in your laws in your own country, then we have got a big problem. You know, and I'd advise somebody, if you don't trust this country to serve justice properly, I suggest you get your passport out and move and leave the country because it's not the country for you. I trust this government. Yes, there's going to be bad policemen. Yes, there's going to be pedo policemen. Yes, there's going to be pedo parliamenticians. There's going to be pedophilia everywhere, and there's going to be abusers everywhere in every department and in every street, if you like. We know that. But to sort of because one man is a pedo, you can't say the other 10 men are pedos as well. You can't do that. If you do that, the country has gone to rat shit. You can't do that at all. You have to have faith in the justice system. It's some faith in the justice system, which I do. I still have faith in it. It still gives out proper justice in my eyes. You know, and Sabina McNeil, shall I say, she's, in court at the moment for pushing a hoax. Bottom line, that's what we know so far. What the outcome is, we don't know. But
you and I spoke about this today. I think Sabine believed it. I really do.
She believed it totally.
I think she believed it,
100%. She must have. And I'm not saying Robert Greene doesn't believe Holly Greig. He must, for what he's done and put his neck out there on the line, he must have 100% believed it. You know,
Danny, how can you say? Let me. I'm going to jump all over this. I mean, we can continue this. We're going to run out of time in about 5 or 6 minutes, and we can continue it again after Christmas anyway. I'll be happy to get back into this with you. How can you possibly say, with the amount of cover-ups we've had in this country, with Hillsborough, Jesus Christ, Danny, with weapons of mass destruction that have seen 3 million Iraqis murdered or displaced, 96 people murdered at Hillsborough, murdered by the police, and the cover-up for years. How can you possibly say that you put your faith in the police to uncover what I believe is a network of paedophilia in this country? Go ahead.
Because for every wrongdoing they've done, they probably did about, I'm speculating, they probably did 100 to 200 good doings. You know, yes, they do wrongdoings. Yes, Hillsborough was a disaster. You know, and they do try and cover their arses. Police do. It's natural. They're in the same group. They're in the same team, and you'll find that happens all over the country in every single department. But what I'm trying to get at is you can't tarnish the whole force and the whole system just because there was one mistake or two mistakes. You can't do that. If you do that, then you might as well, you've got no law in the land then, have you? You've got nothing.
I can't argue with that, except there is a big but. The but is, you couldn't expect them. I mean, one of the things we did learn, and I don't think anybody can dispute this, is that a number of detectives have spoken to the UK's mainstream media after the Savile revelations. And detectives went public and said they were stopped following certain lines of inquiry because they went to the establishment. You talk about the establishment. We have the next in line to the throne in this country, who I've never and would never accuse of anything because it's immoral and it's libelous and it's wrong. But he was the avowed best friend of a record-breaking paedophile, Jimmy Savile. He was the self-confessed best friend of him. And yet he's never been invited into Westminster Police Station for a cup of tea to say, Your Highness, listen, informally, we've got to have a chat with you because this guy was abusing boys, girls, people in old folks' homes. He was a necrophiliac. You spent a lot of time with him. We need to speak to you about things that he might have said, names he might have dropped. None of that has happened. There's got to be a massive cover-up going on, Danny. That's how I see it.
But what would happen if he turned around and said, yeah, you know what, I didn't even know.
I wouldn't believe it.
I didn't know about it.
Do you believe?
You wouldn't believe that, but that could be the truth, couldn't it? Because you just said, you know, you didn't know about Melanie Shaw, but at the time,
it might be the truth. But don't you have to have a little bit of incredulity? Imagine Prince Charles. Imagine he was on now for the laugh, and he was on, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, Danny and Richie, I didn't know anything." I would say to him, "Listen, with respect, I don't believe that MI5 would allow somebody as close to the royal family as they allowed Jimmy Savile." Without knowing what Savile was doing, they must have known. They must have known. Is my
You'd think so. Yeah, you'd think so. You know, 99% sure you think they've got to have known, haven't they? They've got to have known. That's what their job is, to know that sort of stuff. That's their job. So you would think they should know.
And why didn't they do anything about it?
Yeah, that's the question that need to be asked, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the question that need to be asked. You know, they're the people we should be actually asking these questions for. They're the MPs we should be going to and say, we need to lobby you in Parliament and find out what's going on here. Not going on chat shows and sort of spouting off stuff without evidence, you know, just because it's your hunch. It's a hunch, it's a presumption I've got, you know, and that's it. Like, I could have made a Melanie Shaw video and just said, this is what I think and blah, 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 blah.
But do you know why UK Column and others, one of the reasons they do what they do, and again, I'm going to defend them here, it's because there's been a complete absence of any investigation by commercial media. There's been none. The commercial media reported on what Savile did. They knew what he was doing when he was alive. Jesus, Louis Theroux, didn't he, Danny? Louis Theroux spent time with him. And Theroux came back and went, he knew, right? But nobody said anything. So these, you know, independent television shows or radio shows, whatever they are, I'm going to stand up for them and say, they're all at sea, knowing that there's a very, very serious underbelly of ritual paedophilia going on in this country, and it goes all the way to the very top of the establishment. They know it's going on. Savile was a dead giveaway without all the rest of, without Peter Morrison, without Cyril Smith, without Leon Britton, without all that. They know it's going on, but nothing is being done about it. So in comes these alternative media organisations, whom I have to say, I'll criticise UK Column forever for lying about Melanie Shaw, but I believe as bad as they were, I don't believe their motivation was evil. And I don't necessarily believe it was about money either. I think they're so committed to believing what they believe that they did what they did. And I'm not trying to backtrack here. I condemn them for putting out false information. It's rubbish. It's terrible practice. But I think, there's a reason for it. Anyway, over to you again. Go ahead.
Do you not think UK Column purely has generated its income from its show?
Do you know, the truth is apart from speaking to Gerrish 4 years ago, which wasn't a very good interview, I have had nothing to do with any of them. I'm as independent as it gets. I have nothing to do with anyone. It's just me.
Yeah.
And I sometimes fire a broadside. When I see bullshit, I'll fire a broadside. I'm happy to take it back, by the way. It's what's good for the goose. I can take it. I'm very thick skin. I laugh at some of the stuff that's said about this program, and rightly so. And if anybody wants to come on here and have a go at me, send me an email. I'll facilitate you coming on. No problem, 100%.
Well, I'd love you to come on our show, Richie. You come on our show because
you can have a proper go at me then. You can have a proper go at me then.
No, wait, it's not such a proper go at you.
I'm only joking. I'm only joking.
Question, and you can actually answer it honestly, and go, yeah, this is what I want to say, and this is what my opinion. Because a lot of people want to hear your opinion. I know. So you just put out a platform. You don't really give opinions. You just sort of give people a platform, let them spout off what they want to spout off, and then you keep yourself sort of neutral. You don't really pick a side. I've noticed that, which is good for my eyes. You're a host. You're not there.
Yeah, you have to ask the devil's advocate questions when you can. I point out to many of my guests regularly. Listen, there's no definitive proof. This is a theory. I often make that point. This is a theory. There's no proof. This is your opinion. There's no proof. That's the best I can do, But doing it the way I do it obviously I don't have the time to go and research everything that's said by every guest. I'd love the time to do that. I love the money. I'd love to have the money. I'd love to be earning the sort of money that, InfoWars and some of these
that Jonathan Ross is earning,
or like Jonathan Ross is earning, because then you could investigate stuff. I think our listeners have taken pretty. Not that it matters. It doesn't matter anyway. But I think they've taken fairly well to you. They're not.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not in it.
You don't care either. Yeah.
I'm not in it for. No, I'm not in it for subscribers. I'm not in it for clicks. I'm not monetizing my channel. I don't have no intention to. I never will do. I'm not in it for money. I'm in it because 15 years ago, I had a tinfoil hat on and I was down all these rabbit holes. And then I wish someone 15 years ago told me that look into that a different way, look into this a different way. Look, you think the Earth's flat, look into physics, go and look at physics. You think the moon landing's fake, okay, well go and look at this evidence. This will show you that it isn't actually fake. And when you look at these things, you're like, wow, how did I believe that? And I think, I know how I believed it because I watched people like UK Column. I watched people like Alex Jones. I watched people like your David Icke, your Richie Allen shows, your TPV shows. I watched all these things were all pushing the same sort of narrative. And I believed it. Why wouldn't I? There was millions of people saying it's true. But when you find out something that you believe isn't actually true, and you believed it for like 10 years, you think, wow, how much isn't actually true of what I actually believed? So that's what my website's all about, really, is just going down the list of what some of the things might end up being true. Have you heard of Seven? Have you heard of that woman?
No, I haven't.
I presume you have. You've never heard of Seven, right? She came out with a claim 15 years ago or so that all her intellectual properties have been taken off her and been stolen. Strictly Come Dancing, all these game shows are all hers. Okay, 15 years she's been peddling this rubbish, and because the accused wasn't in the country, the accused who she thinks stole the stuff off her was out of the country in America or whatever, doing his own life. But he's come back to the UK and realised all this is going on. And of course, he's got her by the nuts. He's stuck her to court. He's getting the police involved and all sorts. So all of a sudden, we found out that she was also a hoax as well. Yet for 10 years, she managed to, 10 or 15 years, she pushed this stuff, and they got a big following. She had major money sent to her, donations and clicks per views.
I didn't know this. This is really interesting now. Danny, can I just say this? We're going to run out of time. My final word, and then I'm going to give you, you're going to get the absolute final word. I'm going to do 30 seconds, then you'll get 30 seconds. Okay. Look, I don't want to push anything. What I want to do is, to the best of my ability, is listen to people that have got something a bit different to say that, that you don't get to hear through, as I said, commercial and national media. That's all it is. I don't have any personal agenda. Yes, I have personal opinions. I don't believe in politics. I'm not an anarchist, but I don't believe the answer to the problems we have is through voting at the ballot box. I don't believe any of that, and I talk about that. Other than that, I'm very open-minded. I'm happy to have people come on this program that disagree with me and that want to take me on, because when we do it like that and we have a robust exchange, it's good for everybody. That's all I'm going to say. I have no axe to grind. I'm going to, before I give you the last 30 seconds, I'm going to mention your website again, hoaxpolice.wordpress.com. over to you, final 30 seconds, and then we'll wrap it up for today. And thanks for coming on. I've enjoyed speaking with you today.
Well, first of all, I thank you for letting me on. To be honest with you, inviting me on there. I wasn't expecting it. It's been a nice smile from yesterday onwards. I want to get the message out there that I'm not attacking Melanie Shaw at all. It might look that way in some of the videos that I've done. I'm not attacking her per se. I'm attacking the people that was around her and believing they were helping her, and they weren't. They just made it 10 times worse. And in my eyes, they're waiting for her to come back out of prison again so they can jump all over again. And I'd like to be there when she comes out and say, Melanie, come with me. I'll help you. If I have to do that myself, I'll help you. They won't. But bottom line is, I'm just trying to show people that there is another side to the story. Whether they believe that the other side is up to them as well. It's only facts I'm pointing out here and facts you're pointing out there, and people have two sides of the story. You believe what you want to believe. But you've got to draw a line. When you start pushing something where it starts affecting families and kiddies and all that sort of stuff, you've got to think, hang on a minute, I've got to make sure this is damn true before I start pushing any of this. Flat Earth, it's innocent. It's innocent. It can be flat around. Who cares? But when you start going to Hampstead and Holly Greig and these sort of things, it's like, hang on a minute. People are getting innocently ridiculed here and then bullied and, stalked and all that sort of stuff. You've got to draw a line somewhere with this.
Listen, mate.
And that's my feeling on it all.
Good to have you on. Thanks for doing it. We'll pick this up again in the new year. No, seriously, it was good to have you on the programme. Glad I found you and found the video.
I'd love you to come on the show, mate. Come on the show. We won't beat you up. We won't ridicule you. We just got a question.
You can beat me up if you want. I'll be happy. It won't bother me. As I said, I got thick enough skin. Danny, thanks. Look after yourself. Thanks for coming on.
Mate.
Cheers, mate. Bye for now. Right, so that was Danny Jones then. Thanks to Danny for coming on. Enjoyed listening to him. Also enjoyed speaking with Dayna Martin earlier on. I was going to wrap it up, but I did say that the final word is Danny, so I'm going to say no more about it. Other than you have a fantastic weekend. That's it for the week. Thursday's programme draws to a close. I'll speak to you on Sunday morning for Sunday View on the usual platforms. Bye for now. Bye now.